Welcome back to Sika Strength. Welcome back to Sika Stan. My name is Dara. We're S&C coaches who do a lot of consultancy work with athletes. You've probably seen videos like this before where we're looking at an athlete with an exceptional level of skill or an exceptional PR in a certain lift. And we just like to analyze these lifts, talk about why they might be of use to you, talk about certain things those athletes do very well, and what you might want to pay attention to in videos such as this, so it might make it useful for your own training. Now, today we're looking at Harrie Lavreysen. Sorry if I've butchered that pronunciation. He's essentially one of the best velodrome cyclists in the world. So he has 13 or so World Championship gold medals. He has 5 Olympic gold medals. He is from the Netherlands. He's a relatively young athlete. As far as I know, he's born around 97. Around 5'11", low 90 kilos body weight. Now, you might have seen him a number of weeks ago on the Sika Strength news show, and he had one of the crispest power cleans we've ever seen from an athlete. Now, this power clean is obviously very, very good for a number of reasons. First thing, it's 140 kilos. It's getting up around that 1.5 times body weight metric that we always talk about for general sports athletes. But also, what we're really looking at here is positionally, he is exceptionally good. So let's look at the setup first. Now, let's start from the bottom. Firstly, wearing weightlifting shoes. This is going to be a massive advantage and definitely something pretty much every athlete should be doing, particularly with their power cleans. Obviously, with your squats is going to give you an advantage, but on the power cleans, having that more rigid shoe and the slightly raised heel is going to make for a much better pull, but also a much better catching position. So the rigidity of the sole is a massive thing here, just how solid you are, how quickly those nerve feedbacks, those afferent feedbacks come back from the sole of your foot back up to your brain makes a huge difference for how good that power clean can be. So firstly, he's wearing his weightlifting shoes. Secondly, he's got a really good standard stance here. So usually for our pulling stance, it's going to be inside shoulder width, usually around hip width apart. We might have toes pointed slightly out to the side, certainly not 45-degree angles. We want those toes to be as close to straight ahead as we can reasonably have them. Now, why might you point your toes slightly out to the side? Well, just to give your hips a bit more room. Externally rotate slightly, get down into that start position a small bit easier. Now, moving up along the chain from here, we don't have the knees massively out in advance of the barbell. We have hips above the line of the knee in the starting position. Now, this is absolutely vital. To initiate a good first pull in a clean or power clean, the most important thing is that the initial movement of the barbell is rearward. So as we pull the bar off the floor, it's incredibly important that the barbell sweeps back in towards the athlete's shins rather than bumping out and forward and around the knees. So why is the hips being higher in the start position important? Well, essentially it brings that shin to a closer to vertical angle, making this rearward sweep easier. So he's set up in a really good position. You'll see just before that pull starts, he tightens his upper and his mid back and gets into a nice solid isometric hold there. Very nice first pull, barbell is sweeping backwards. Very good second pull here. We'll see the barbell really starts to accelerate at this point. And now onto probably the pièce de résistance of his power clean. He has a very nice contact point. So making contact on the clean or the power clean or a hang clean usually happens around a third of the way down the quad. So 2/3 of the way up from the knee. And a lot of the time we see athletes in particular more so than weightlifters, making very aggressive contact with the fronts of the quads or the hips. This tends to bounce the barbell out and around. The barbell tends to swing out in a semicircular pattern, and it leads to this kind of smash and grab power clean. Now, you'll see here in Harrie's case, Harrie has a very, very smooth contact point. That contact happens over the course of probably 4 or 5 inches on the fronts of the quads rather than a single inflection point that the barbell bounces off. And this leads to him being incredibly vertical and the barbell being incredibly vertical as he pulls himself under. Now, this brings us to our next point. The pull under on the power clean here is perfect. Now, this all starts by not overextending and not over pulling the bar as you're getting underneath. So a lot of the time on a power clean, athletes are thinking about pulling that barbell as high as humanly possible. Think about really pulling that barbell up so they can catch it in a high position. Whereas in fact, what you should be doing is doing exactly like Harrie is doing here, where you're prioritizing keeping your torso in a vertical position or as close to vertical position as possible and pulling yourself aggressively down onto the barbell. Now, moving on from here, all the standard things, nice amount of foot movement. His feet move out into that squat catch position. And very importantly here, he keeps his hips back behind the level of his heels to catch that power clean. A lot of the time when we look at football players power cleaning or rugby players power cleaning, you'll see their hips come very far forward. The hip tends to sit over the ball of the foot and the feet then scoot out into a very wide starfish-like catch position. This just leads to non-ideal positions, particularly if the athlete has to sink a bit more or bail the barbell. You're better to be in a closer to standard squat position with your hips back over the level of your heels. This just makes for a much stronger and much safer catch position. So what's leading to this exceptionally good power clean? Well, this isn't the only power clean we have from him. This isn't the only clean we've seen him do. We've seen him clean 160 kilos not too long ago, just before World Championships. We've seen him doing 215 kilos on the back squat for reps. We've seen him doing 380 kilos on a single leg press for reps as well. So it's clear here that Harrie has a very good base in strength. Not only are all those technical aspects coming in that we talked about in terms of his setup, how he's pulling on the bar, how he's moving himself around the barbell, but that baseline strength has to be there if you want to be moving a barbell this well, this efficiently, this quickly. So not only do you need all that strength to be able to put a lot of force into the bar, but you also need all that strength just to be able to maintain those positions, to be able to maintain that rigid back extension, to be able to maintain that vertical torso as you pull yourself under. Now, all this work in the gym is leading to obvious, clear success on the track or in the velodrome itself, but it's also leading to massive power outputs. So in a race from last year, he had 2,117 watts in that race, or that was his peak power output during that race. Obviously, when we consider a video we did a number of weeks ago on Lance Armstrong where he had 500 watts being outputted for 30 minutes on one of the climbing stages, this is very different, right? So it's more than 4 times the power output, but it only happens over 10 seconds. And this is really what we're looking at when we're looking at the sprint cyclist or the velodrome cyclist versus the road cyclist from the Tour de France or Giro d'Italia or whatever it is. It's a very different style of athlete you're developing. You're talking about somebody who's probably 20 plus kilos more than the road cyclist is going to be. Their race, the length of race is so drastically different, and that's why we get these different outcomes. We see the massive quads from someone like Forstmann. We see these crazy strength numbers that you'd consider to be good if this person was a javelin thrower, not a mind to say a track cyclist. But it's obviously a stark contrast to what we'll see, even though we have some sprint events in the races like the Tour de France. It's a very, very different game. It's a very different kettle of fish, and it's a very different level of athletic development that goes on. So try not to get those two things mixed up. If you'd like to do something like this, if you'd like a really big power clean, maybe you'd like a really big squat, make sure you check out the Sika Strength app. It's available on iOS and Android. You can try it for free for 7 days. Just download the app, set yourself up, just delete it at the end of the 7 days and you won't be charged. But you could do something like the Power Clean program, which is power cleans twice per week with some accessory work. Maybe you could run one of the back squat cycles in an off season to get those strength numbers up. And if you've any questions, we're always available. sikastrength@gmail.com is the best place to get us.